I'm in the studio here with Charlie Adams, very well known here in Berks County for being in radio for 35 plus years at WEEU as the morning man, and also, of course, as Berks County's resident ghost expert. Charlie, welcome.
Oh, it's great to be here.
Pleasure to have
It
you here.
is.
Now, you recently spoke to my students here about your life in radio, and you just recently had a memorable experience happen in your life. You retired after how many years as WEEU's morning man?
35 and a half years. I
Wow.
was there. The morning man for 28
Wow.
years, but total, I was in news for 8 years before that.
So did you know from the time my mom will always embarrass me and tell stories of how little Mike knew from the time he was 4 years old that he wanted to do radio broadcasting around the house with my microphone. Did you know ever since you were a toddler, or did this kind of come later in life?
It started early in life. My
Okay.
cousins and I used to play radio,
Hmm.
and our old Wallensack recorders, tape recorders. In fact, my grandfather was in radio back in the 30s and 40s.
Wow.
And so radio, though, to me was something unattainable. It was
Mhm.
something that only very talented, very dedicated people did, and I was never any of that. And so I just kind of backed into it. I really, I thought maybe I could do it, and applied for a job, and then hoped I could do it. And I got the job, and I kept, with the proviso, I started doing no on-air stuff for
Right.
6 months or so. Not that there was just no opening at the time.
Right.
And then I went to just doing news, but I'd come from a news background.
Hmm.
I worked as an editor of a newspaper for 8 years before that. So I morphed into broadcast news, which wasn't all that different.
Hmm.
And of course, I get that Irish gift of the gab thing going
Mhm.
on, so
Sure.
I could yak away with just impudence. I was just loved it. And then I often thought I'd love to do morning radio because that was like the prime time thing.
Right. Right.
And I love music, played in a band all my life, and I thought I'd like to do that. And then when that opening came up, I just, please, 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 I think I can do this, you know.
Hmm.
And it was never, for me, it was always, I think I can entertain. I think I can have the audience, I can get an audience
Hmm.
and keep an audience. And that's something that's always been primary in my thoughts in radio.
So how long were you morning at WEEU?
28 and a half years.
28 and a half years.
Yeah.
So what told you it was time to retire?
It was just a lot of personal things that were going on, nothing unusual. And everybody, when they hit 65,
Right.
you start, well, now you can retire.
Hmm.
You start collecting Social Security or whatever at 66. I lost both my parents a couple of years ago, within a matter of a few months. And that was disheartening. You start to realize...
Life is short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You assess your own mortality, and you start to realize that you don't have a lot left. You really don't. A lot behind you, but not a lot left by comparison. So I wanted to make the most of that and sort of back out. And it was painful to do that because I still loved doing what I was doing.
Right.
But the time had come, and also I wanted to. It sounds self-aggrandizing, but I wanted to go out sort of on top.
Hmm.
Not like, oh, is he still on the air? I want people
Right.
to say, oh, he's not on the air?
Right. Right. Right.
That's what I want, to leave. And I hope, generally, that's what happened. The feedback I've gotten is just that.
Good.
But you just know when it's time.
Right, right. And that was the time. Now, you've been in radio a long, long time, and I always tell my students here at KUR about some of the, obviously I've been in radio much, much shorter time than you, but still I have some stories about when I would sleep overnight at WEU when a big snowstorm was coming, if they thought that nobody would be able to make it in the next day. Can you think of one thing in your 35 years that really stands out as a memorable or a strange or life-changing experience on the air? A caller that said that somehow you changed their life, or I don't know. What would you say?
Yeah, I can't think of one
Particular?
like that, but there are those incidents where
Yeah.
when you're talking to a microphone, as we're doing right now,
Right.
and people hopefully are listening right now. Thank you for listening, you folks.
Right.
But when you're talking, as you know, in a radio studio, you're talking to walls,
Right.
and air and vapor. You don't realize who you're touching out there. And there's been countless, whether it's a song I played, that was our song right before we got married, or favorite song haven't heard that in 1,000 years, or I heard that song you played, boy, is that terrible. Why'd you play that piece of crap?
Right.
I touched them, though, somehow. And that's
Right.
what communication's all about, is communicating with an audience, and that's the overriding thing of all of this. And that's what I felt. But then there were other things, personal things that I was able to do, like first person to play Taylor Swift on the radio, and then because we're family friends, she came into the show while while her hit was #1.
Right.
She just kind of snuck in and played a couple songs on the air with me. All the ego stuff that comes up in communications and radio. Had lunch at the White House twice with President Reagan.
Yep.
Met and interviewed every person I ever wanted to interview on my personal bucket list. People you never heard of, but Fess Parker, who played Davy Crockett.
I've heard of him, actually.
And Bob Turley, a pitcher for the Yankees back in the 60s, and everybody from the British invasion music era over the years. And so it's just a great run. It takes enterprise to do that. For anybody who aspires to radio, it takes some personal enterprise. And again, though, you must remember, I didn't interview Fess Parker because I wanted to interview Fess Parker. That was probably 82% of it. But the other was 18% or whatever, was I hope my audience will enjoy listening to an interview with Fess Parker. Maybe even a worse ratio than that. I was playing to an audience, and that's what you have to, anybody gets into radio or communications must absolutely remember. And sometimes I can sense people who are not playing to an audience.
Right.
Whether it's radio or television. I watched recently Jimmy Fallon took over for Jay Leno.
Right.
Leno was playing to an audience. And I can see Jimmy Fallon is too. There are others who are just dropped by the wayside and variety shows on TV. They were never. It was all ego. It was all, look what I can do. Look at what I am doing for you. No, what can you do for me?
Right.
You know, you're trying to talk to thousands of people out there, each with different, tastes and talents, or tastes and tolerances. But you try to present something that at least something along the line will relate to somebody somewhere. It's hard to describe.
So you were talking about being willing to do anything. I mean, we were talking about that a little bit over lunch about students that might come and say, I want to focus on this one thing, but really you have to be open to anything.
Oh, absolutely.
You have to be open to anything.
Yeah, I hate to say it this way, but you can almost tell when a male applicant. What are your interests? What would you like to do in radios? Sports.
Yep.
That's the default to sports. Right. And we have actually had applicants come in who will not budge from that. If I would say, or the PD would say, the program director would say, well, we don't have an opening for sports. Well, then.
Goodbye.
Yeah. And then it's almost as like you smacked him in the face, like, how dare you do that to me?
Right.
Well, if they just would have said, well, sports, but I can do anything. I'd be willing to do anything. Then they're going to be
whole different attitude.
That paper will be put to the side and as a possibility.
Right.
And I think, and I see that all the time with male or female. It doesn't matter if it's sports or entertainment of something that they might just do entertainment reports. No, don't do that.
Right.
Come in with an attitude that basically I am Wonder Woman or Master Man. I can do anything.
Right.
Anything you want me to do. And my first job in a newspaper, I went in for the job. And I just had gotten out of the Navy, and I said, "What do you have, an opening for?" He said, "Well, a photographer." I said, "Well, I can do that." I had never
taken a picture in your life.
Well, I took pictures, snapshots, and schematics and stuff. But this required the full tilt boogies, processing the pictures, making halftones of them, making negatives of the
pre-computer days,
all that kind of crazy stuff. And they said, "Well, come in Monday, and we can start in a couple weeks." I said, great. So I went out and borrowed every book I could on photography. And within a week, I was confident that I could go in there and do the job.
Yeah.
Because it's a matter of personal enterprise. And it's also, I felt good about that personally because, wow, something I never did before in my life. But, wow, this is pretty cool. And we have a fellow where I worked, when I was at WEEU in Reading. Much the same thing. He came in and wanted to do one particular thing, but wound up doing totally different. Still continues to do some of the sports stuff that he came in for, but now he does an agriculture report. He didn't say, well, he didn't demean it, belittle it. I'm not going to do a farm report. Are you crazy? I'm a great sportscaster. No. He said, sure, I can do that. And then he makes them very interesting.
Right.
So you got to have that that personal enterprise and flexibility.
So kind of broadening a little bit from the person to the medium in general. We were talking a little bit again over lunch about radio. Where is radio heading? I mean, I have some students that'll come to me, oh, Mike, radio is dead. Not
Well,
quite. I don't think so.
I don't either. I
Yeah.
really don't. Certainly, radio isn't, and broadcasting
Mhm.
isn't. It's morphing into all kinds of different. Since I'm retired, in fact, when I was still working there, I listened to Pandora,
Mm-hmm.
my Bluetooth in my car,
Mm-hmm.
listen to AOL radio, whatever it might be. So those are just computer-generated pap. But after a while, I get tired of that. And I notice my 38-year-old daughter gets tired of that
Mm-hmm.
and goes. She lives in the D.C. area, and she goes to a D.C. station to hear actual people
Mm-hmm.
talking
Yeah.
and commercials playing, of where and my I talk to 15 and 20-year-olds who get tired of that too,
Mm-hmm.
because they eventually realize this is nice. It's elevator music.
Mm-hmm.
I want somebody to talk to me.
Right. Right.
I want somebody who can communicate with me about my highway situation,
Right.
my news, whatever. So I think it's as we talked about earlier, that going in cycles, and it's going to be a long cycle until it comes back to, and we'll never go back to what it was.
Right.
But I think AM radio in particular will remain strong.
Really?
And I see that is happening
Mm-hmm.
in certain markets. AM radio is still very strong because people rely on it for information
Mm-hmm.
and for the connection with their community.
AM has changed more into a talk venue, and,
Right.
and FM is more music. But even on FM, you're seeing more talk type
Yeah,
of
yeah.
events or formats going
Yeah.
out there as well.
Yeah.
So another known fact about you, just transitioning a little bit, is that you're a local writer and expert on ghosts. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Oh.
This is something. Where did that come down the pike as well? Did this was this something with you since a child or childhood, or did this kind of morph over the years?
Well, I guess my interest in the paranormal, as it's called now, two things kind of came together at one
Right.
point. My interest in folklore
Mhm.
and legends and things like that, generally, here and anywhere in the world. I'm always interested in the lore of the folk.
Mm-hmm.
And that was since I was a kid, since my grandmother literally took me on her knee and told me stories about Witch's Hill up there up in Windsor Township.
Yep,
Or,
near Hamburg.
yeah. Or 5 Locks up near Hamburg or whatever. She'd tell me these ghost stories with these places. Wow. And I got interested in that. And I started always been interested in history. And then a branch of history is legends and folklore. So I had that lingering in me somewhere. And then I had a personal experience that I couldn't explain. At one point, I was about 19 years old in the Navy aboard a ship. And after I had the experience and couldn't explain it, but what the heck just happened?
Mm-hmm.
It was explained to me that where I experienced and what I experienced had been experienced by many other people, unbeknownst to me, because that's a spot where 21 men were killed on that ship back in World War II. And so I had that. All of a sudden, I'm curious, am I onto something here? Then all those, is Witch's Hill, could that be real? Are those ghosts at 5 Locks that people have said they've experienced real? Mary's ghost up in Old Main here at KU, is it real? We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the magic of all of that. And then I started writing in that newspaper I worked for. I started writing a series of stories about is Berks County haunted?
Mm-hmm.
And the question was answered by hundreds of letters. Remember what letters were before emails?
I know, isn't that
And,
something? Yeah.
And phone calls that, oh, I read your ghost story now. You hear what happened to me, you know. Next thing you know, I had dozens and dozens of stories. So I put a book together, and 38 books later, it's still happening.
One thing that's neat about your style of writing, and I've read several of your books, is how you don't claim to be one of those, like when you watch the Learning Channel, and these guys go around with these machines and try to detect, cold spots and all that stuff. You don't claim to do that. You're basically telling stories.
I am.
Yeah.
The books are called Ghost Stories,
Right.
Of whatever. Now, I have used all that equipment.
Okay.
I have gone on, on to on lockdowns at night and sort of thing. I'm the resident ghost guy at Eastern State Penitentiary, which
Okay.
is like the Valhalla of Ghostland,
Right.
America. We've done all the shows, Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters. Those guys are all good buddies of mine. So I've done all those things, but for some reason, I don't need to do that
Right.
to tell the story. That's all tangential, technological, and to me, very boring stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Conversely, though, since I retired, I started making copper divining rods, which are also used in the pursuit
familiar
of
with that, yeah.
paranormal. And so I'm making those in my little shop downstairs in my house and selling them when I speak, and having incredible feedback from people who've purchased them and used them.
Mm-hmm.
And then they say, I couldn't believe it. These things actually seem to work.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's my technology, divining rods,
Right.
and your own intuition.
Intuition, yeah.
You know.
Now, you've written books from Berks County ghost stories. You have other versions as well, too, don't you? You have a Schuylkill County one and Cape May and all
New
that.
York City,
Yeah.
Philadelphia, Pittsburgh. There's 30-some altogether, yeah. Scranton, Wilkes-Barre area.
Yeah.
2 in the Lehigh Valley, Chester County, Delaware County,
Mm-hmm.
Lancaster County.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what's next for Charlie Adams now that you're retired and enjoying life? What are we going to be doing? Traveling, continuing to write, or
Yeah,
a little all the above?
All of the above. I still write for the Reading Eagle.
Mhm.
Every Sunday I do a travel column.
Mhm.
That's one of my main passions now is travel columns. And another travel feature every other Sunday. I do a local day trip travel story every Thursday in the weekend section.
Mm-hmm.
And something called Berkshire Bazaar every other Wednesday, which is Ghost Story,
Mm-hmm.
all in the Reading Eagle. So luckily, and Reading Eagle owns WEU, so
Mhm. Sure.
the tie is still there. And very fortunate that they allowed me to continue doing that, because it keeps the mind going. You know?
Sure.
And also I get tax deductions when I travel, because I'm a travel writer.
There you go.
But so I intend to travel much as I can. And I'm still in the mindset. I'm not even 6 months retired yet. Like, I only get 5 weeks vacation. Well, I can go anytime I want now.
Right.
You know, I can't. So I want to go to spring training. Well, my wife said, well, then go. I said, okay, make sure I get the day off. I have every day off, you know. So I want to travel a lot. I doing a lot, as many ghost story stuff as I ever did. Tours. I'm doing a lot of week-long tours to haunted places. Yeah, a lot of that sort of thing. Making my little divining rods, and doing the laundry at home, and
There you go.
watching Twilight Zone every night at 9 or at 11 on MeTV.
I have to ask you a fun question before we wrap up. Was it difficult after getting up at 3:30 in the morning for how many years? Was it weird
Oh,
not
my.
getting up at 3:30 anymore? Were you still getting up at 3:30?
I still woke up at 3:30.
Still woke up at
I
3:30.
looked at the clock, said 3:30, and right back to bed.
Right back.
Yeah, because that was difficult.
Yeah.
And I get up around 6 now, because my wife gets up around 6,
Okay.
and so I'll wake up around 6. And now, even months after I retired, I think my day's half over.
Yeah. Right.
Because it's 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, God, I wasted all this time. But I realize the rest of the world's day is just beginning.
Right.
I got to get into that rest of the world mode. And I'm
Right.
still not in that yet. 6 o'clock, I want to get going. I want to get moving. I get rolling.
Right.
I realize the rest of the world's not doing that yet. So,
Right.
and I've paid the price for that. I've gone places that I expect to open because it's 8 o'clock. They better be open.
I'm up. Why aren't you? Yeah.
That's right. The rest of
Exactly.
the world should be too. Darn it.
Right.
So it is an adjustment, big adjustment, a very pleasant adjustment.
I'm sure, definitely. So, where can we get if anybody wanted to read any of your books? Do you have a website or a Facebook account, and
Well,
people can follow you?
My Charles Jams III is my author's name.
Right.
On Amazon or BarnesandNoble.com. Barnes and Noble. Firefly right here in Kutztown is going to be selling the book.
Yep.
In fact, I just talked to them the day we're doing this interview. They want to have a possible thing during a fair up here, a sidewalk.
Oh, okay. Probably the block
In
party
April.
or one
Yeah,
of the
the block party.
block party in April. Yeah.
And I might be appearing at that
Okay.
to sign books.
Yeah. Very good. Well, it's a pleasure having you here, Charlie.
great.
Thank you so much for talking to my students and for being a guest here on the show. I mean, you're
Anytime.
definitely an inspiration to Berks County.
Oh, absolutely. I'm
Yeah.
sure.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll see you.
you.